How are you enjoying the Edamama Online Family Expo so far? Do share your insights and takeaways so that others attending may benefit from all those thoughts as well. Please use our official hashtag. It is hashtag Edamama Expo 2021. Let's continue, shall we? One of the biggest joys of parenting is seeing our little ones hit their first milestones. And we're lucky because nowadays we get to document it all. Now, as they grow older, there will be more and more of these sweet little wins that we will celebrate along with any red flags that we should all watch out for. Now, along with the people behind the growing brain, let's all virtually welcome early childhood development consultant, Dr. Angel Bell D, who is here to walk us through our baby's development and the milestones that we can expect as they transition to their toddler years.
Everyone, and welcome to the topic of understanding your child's development, the different milestones from infancy to toddler age. I'm very grateful for Edamama's invitation to talk to you about this very important topic today. So very quickly, I do want to give a reminder that the information I do share during the talks are educational purposes only, and they're not implied for diagnosis or medical management. In case you do have concerns about your children and their development, please do not hesitate to approach your pediatricians and other child health specialists. I really would like to be able to share things that I've experienced in clinic and in research, and hope that this can become something that helps and supports your parenting journey. All right, so let's begin. So when I was invited to share with you about developmental milestones, I realized how complex and vast that topic is, but really I only have a few minutes with you guys today. So what I'd like to do is hopefully reach these objectives instead. And generally, I think one of the main goals being a child advocate is really that children have a chance to be happy, healthy, and have optimal development. In doing so, I'd like to be able to discuss activities that will help you achieve this optimal development, and also to look into milestones a little bit, but more on when to be concerned about these milestones. So our children, they're really born learning, right? They come out and they might be these little things, but they are really naturally curious, and they're really driven to learn and make sense of the world from the first day that they're born, from day one. In order for children to eventually be ready to go to school, to experience life in the future, children need to develop strong foundations in motor skills and communication skills, their thinking skills, and their social emotional skills, and how they're able to interact with other people. And to do that, these are what we call as milestones, right? But because again, we don't have enough time to discuss all the milestones, what I want you to be able to do is at least you can search for these milestones online. Ang dali lang din po kasi maghanap na rin sa Google, di ba? Siguro ang advice ko lang po is if we're going to look for milestones online, try to look for the reputable sources po, no? We have so many reputable references. We have the CDC, we have healthychildren.org from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Meron din pong website called pathways.org. These websites have excellent resources for you to look at actual milestones per age group. And we also have information from sites like the Philippine Pediatric Society and the Philippine Society for Developmental Behavioral Pediatrics. So let's make use of those. So rather than going through the actual checklists that you can search for, ang gusto ko sana is to reframe what we can do with these milestones. what you can actually do is, instead of being very nitty gritty, trying to understand every milestone available, what we can do is take these milestones and use them as our guide. Guide you sana po to think about activities na pwede pong gawin ng mga anak po natin. Ano po yung kaya yung pwede natin introduce na play or or task na pwedeng gawin ng children natin, because children need the opportunity to practice. And when they are able to practice during play, that's when they achieve the actual milestones po, no? To learn all of these things from the experience. And so, ang nangyayari po, our children's first teachers are actually the parents. But the good news is, hindi naman po namin ine-expect na maging teacher din po si mommy tsaka si daddy or any other caregivers po na nag-aalaga po sa children natin. You're not expected to make them sit down, to teach them letters, to teach them flashcards. Kasi our children are actually learning from just the interaction and the playtime that they have with you. Ang mas important pa nga po is that they have a loving, caring, and responsive caregiver na nag-aalaga po sa kanila. Because when they interact with you during these times, doon po lumalabas ang mga basic skills po na kinakailangan po ng children natin. And when they learn these things, it's what they need to get along with other people, to become more confident, and hopefully enthusiastic din po sila matuto. Enthusiastic learners po ang habol natin sa kanila. All too often din po kasi, this is the type of picture I see a lot on toy boxes, especially when they're being advertised po, no? It's usually an individual child playing with an quote-unquote educational toy na may numbers, may letters, may shapes. And it seems like this child knows what they're doing, di ba? And of course, sino naman pong hindi na parent na iisipin na gusto ko din yung child ko, kaya po niyang gawin to. And I'm not saying naman po that children won't be able to do it, that they won't be able to figure the shape sorter out on their own, especially when you give them enough trial and error. Pero, ang gusto ko lang po sanang i-highlight is the more realistic type of play, ang habol po namin as child development specialists is this reality that we provide children the enough support for them to learn within the context of relationship. Na meron pong nagtuturo sa kanila, someone who's coaching them when they need it, and not just waiting for them to learn it on their own. Kasi gusto po natin, the very young age po kasi, they build their confidence by having someone cheering them on, by having someone like creating obstacles. When they're doing something difficult, someone is there to push them up. So the stair climbing, or maybe when they're doing like this one in the slide where the little child is trying to fit shapes in a shape sorter, there's an adult who helps create a thinking process for them if they're having a difficult time. So pwede niyong i-adjust a little bit para naman maging successful si Dude. So if there's anything I'd like you to go home with today, is really the reality of having this parent-child interaction with your children. Let's start from the 0 to 2 month old age. Our 0 to 2 month olds, they're cooing. Cooing po is making those little baby sounds that we hear them make, no? It's a little gurgling sound, but it's not very specific. Pero at this age, or when they're born, they might already start to pay attention to faces also. And they're probably recognizing their primary caregivers, yung madalas po talaga nag-aalaga sa kanila. So for learning at this age, ang recommended po namin talaga is for you to be able to have face-to-face interactions with them. That is close enough that they can recognize you or recognize that there's a face, and so that they can practice interacting with this face that they're recognizing. So hanapin po natin yung distance na kaya na po ni baby na makita po kayo. And then we also want to encourage, of course, tummy time. tummy time is very important kasi para siyang exercise for our little ones. Napapractice po ang arms nila kasi nagpo-push up sila. Napapractice din po, iangat po ang ulo. So all parts of the motor milestones that we hope for our children. Yung ibang babies po, medyo fidgety po sila, medyo ang tawag po natin nade-dysregulate or mabilis maiyak na po, and you'll see them kicking their arms and legs. You can actually help them or teach them to calm down. Yung iba po, you can simply give them their hand to suck on kasi sucking helps calm the body down. Yung iba po, if you just put a calming hand on the chest or maybe put their hands together and put it on the chest of the baby, minsan nakakalma din po yung katawan ni baby. And when we do this at a very young age, natututo po yung anak natin to calm themselves down with as little intervention as possible po sana. But of course, if these things are not working, then we can go ahead and pick up our little ones. And of course, cradle them and do what we can to help calm them down. By the time they're about 3 to 4 months old, ayan, mas maingay po sila. They vocalize a little bit more. They actually let you know when they're feeling happy, when they're feeling sad. And most of the time when they're smiling at you, hindi na po siya reflex. They actually mean to smile at you talaga. And they're enjoying spending time with you. And so what's nice about this stage also is they're also holding their heads up a little bit longer. So tummy time is still important. And what's nice about it is with all of these skills, it just means they're more ready talaga to keep socializing. And malamang mas matagal na rin po silang awake. The awake time is a little longer. So you want to maximize the time that they're awake, that they're alert, and to be able to interact with them. Siguro ang reminder lang din po, when they cry at this age, they're really not crying to make us upset. Most likely they're crying because there's something to be upset about. And so it would be nice to think about it in that way, na hindi po nananadya po ang mga babies natin. But when they cry this age, you're probably recognizing na may cry for hunger na, may cry for I'm wet, may cry for I'm sleepy na rin po. No? And if you think about it, because there are different cries, these are actually ways to communicate already. And of course, we don't want to ignore our children, diba, if they're trying to communicate with us. The next stage would be around the 5 to 7 month olds or the half year babies already. By this time, they're really making more sounds. Yung iba po, nagbababbling na rin po yan. They are more aware. They're probably looking at things like this baby here in this picture. May hawak na po siyang mga toys. At ang mga toys po, maabot na po sa bibig. They tend to mouth a lot of toys. And when you show them mirrors, they are beginning to recognize themselves in the mirror already. Yung iba po sa kanila will try to touch the baby that they're seeing in the mirror. And that's actually a milestone or a step that we want them to be able to achieve. So for learning at this age, ang encourage ko lang po talaga is acknowledge. Acknowledge their communication intent. Kung nag-ingay po sila, as if may sinabi po sila sa inyo, magdaldalan po kayo, sagutin nyo rin po sila. They might be reaching out and you might want to give them a high five, or you might want to help them reach whatever they're trying to reach out to as well. Really, this is an age na because there's more awareness, na-encourage po talaga natin ang exploration po ni baby. So sensory types of toys, things to hold, different textures, different things to look at, different things to reach for and try to get. These are all different types of activities na pwede po natin i-introduce. Ngayon po, si baby din po, this one in the middle, some of them are actually recognizing that some people are strangers na rin. And it's important to remember this because I know sometimes we have mga lolo, lola, or mga titas who might feel bad when baby doesn't like them. Because at this time, you'll actually see that the brain is developing a memory for things familiar. At kung hindi po familiar, nakaka-anxious naman po talaga. And so we have to give them time to warm up and probably not go for them head on kasi nakaka-anxious din naman po talaga yun. No? We go into our about 9-month-olds na rin po, no? Their awareness at this age, sobrang nagbaballoon. It's really growing. They're copying sounds, they're copying gestures, and this is a stage that you probably feel so connected with them. This is the beginning of more and more talaga na motor imitation. So like this picture here on the top corner, si mommy nag-gesture po, nag-wave. And so what we actually want to encourage is some of our actions and gestures, try to make them bigger. So waving, bye, para mapagaya din po yung baby natin. This is also an age where we want to encourage using the fingers to point at things. Minsan is to point at things nearby and eventually to point to things far away. And that's important. And why? Pointing kasi is not just about isolating your finger. It's actually a cognitive process saying that I have an idea, I want to show you, I'm going to use my finger as a pointer para tingnan mo din siya. And so it's complex, di ba? Siyempre, hindi naman yun talaga yung sinabi ni baby sa, sa mind niya. But that's what is forming for them. That's why when we reach this age, we really want to encourage them to be able to point to things, to be able to use gestures. Kasi before they form words, they use these gestures to communicate with us. More and more, nagiging more complex na rin yung mga kaya nila. Yung iba, ginagamit na nila yung finger and thumb to pick up food, to be able to eat on their own. One other thing, siguro, is to be very careful about furniture, especially when your kids start to move around now, whether it's at 9 months old or even earlier. So we want to make sure nothing falls on them kasi nagiging malikot na nga po sila. Yung iba nga po, they might pull themselves up to stand. So you want to make sure if the toys that are there for them to pull up are sturdy. Okay, so that we avoid any accidents from happening. By the time they're 1-year-olds, they're probably responding to simple requests already, such as give or bring here, or yung iba nga po, nagigets na rin po nila ang no, if it comes with words. We also want to recognize that they might show some fears already for certain situations, and that having a favorite toy, favorite activities are actually comforting for them. So you're going to start to see this memory development for things that they favor. May mga favorite things, favorite shows, favorite songs na po sila. And then again, there's that pointing ulit, no? Pointing with the index finger, this appreciation for pressing buttons, dito po yan lumalabas. Kaya po pre-pandemic, marami po tayong mga kids na naghahabulan kasi gusto po nila mag-press ng mga elevator buttons. Yun po ang interest po talaga ng ating mga 1-year-old. The other nice and interesting and fun thing about yung mga 1-year-olds natin is kaya na po nila mag-play simple games with us. Kung dati tayo nag-i-initiate lahat ng play for them, they can do simple games such as peekaboo, na sila ang mag-i-initiate nga po. Either mag-cover sila ng sarili, they'll try to get you to pay attention to them. At ayan, tuwang-tuwa sila when you find them as well. And so you realize na meron na silang appreciation for you and for this fun interaction. And so, i-invite ka nila, makilaro sa kanila. More and more, they can actually also move more freely, more independently. They can get to sitting and maybe even pulling up to stand and getting back down into crawling faster and more independent also. So really, we want to encourage all of these movements as well. By about 18 months, they already know a lot more ordinary things kasi nga po, they've become so mobile. They see and watch you. They see and watch everything and everyone around them. So they're starting to get a grasp kung paano ba gawin dapat yung mga iba't ibang bagay, which means you actually have to let them see some of these things and maybe let them try. So more and more, they might be pointing to get your attention. They are showing interest in toys like dolls and stuffed animals. They might actually start pretending to feed them also. Ayan, nanggagaya na po yan. Yung iba, nagsastart na po mag-scribble, nagsastart na po to try to put the shoes on. Not that they're always successful, but you'll see them trying. And so you want to give them that opportunity to try. It's also at this age na yun, yung iba po kasi, well, dapat naman po by this age, naglalakad na po sila. So they're pulling toys while they're walking. And what we want to encourage also is that, again, we mentioned earlier, is opportunities for independence. Pulling your socks off, helping to get dressed. Sana po by this time, they're using their spoon more effectively. Yung iba po talaga, nasushoot na po ang pagkain sa bibig with a spoon. But it will only happen if you let them try it. They should also be able to use a glass independently as well already. And the spilling might still happen, kaya po may mga bib pa rin po yung mga babies if you notice them in this picture. But the spilling gets less and less the more they practice. Kasi nga, it's a motor skill to pick up a glass and bring it to your mouth and drink it. By the time they're 2 years old, ayan, these are our toddlers. They do say they're terrible twos, but they could also be your terrific twos. It's a matter of what you think about it, yung mga ginagawa po nila at that time. Really, our 2-year-olds are all about me, kaya ko yan, I can do it by myself. Because they have this they discover that they can do so much. So they can find things even when hidden under 2 or 3 covers, meaning may persistence na sila to find things, and they have a memory na talagang nandyan yan. So hahanapin ko po siya. They are also building the skills to build towers of 4 or more blocks. So you'll notice that if you do give them blocks, medyo mas complex na po yung kaya nila. They'll really want to put things on top of each other. They'll probably also enjoy knocking it down. Nakakatuwa din naman po yun. They might show some simple skills na rin po for sorting. Not right away, but if you introduce it to them and you give them opportunities to sort, they will eventually learn it. They are beginning to expand their play skills and pretend skills. Kumbaga before, it was just really those dolls and not as complex. Now you'll really see a growth in na nanggagaya po sila ng lahat ng nagagawa natin in real life. They might feed the doll, give them milk, change their diaper, give them new clothes, take the doll to the store. All of these things, ginagaya na po rin nila. There's also a greater appreciation for books. We want to introduce books as early as we can, but it's also at 2 years old that you might see them interact with the book a little bit more. They'll have favorite characters that they might recognize. Point na rin po nila. Yung iba po nakaka-recognize na po ng mga common objects or things that you've shown them very frequently. And so those are skills that we want to encourage them to keep doing din po. Our 2-year-olds, again, I said this earlier, showing more and more independence. Sila na rin po yung malikot. They'll probably climb onto and down from furniture without help. I think what's nice to remember about this age is because they want to do that, you probably want to show them the proper way to do it. Kumbaga, if they're coming down from the bed, rather than, kasi diba, matatakot po tayo kasi pababa siya. What we can do is actually help them and guide them. Ano yung proper way of going down para hindi na rin po siya dangerous for them. At this age, they're also copying others, especially adults and other children. And so you'll see that there's an appreciation for their children na rin po kung nakaka-interact na rin po sila with another child. I know it's not that easy during the pandemic and not everyone has this opportunity, but when the time comes, hopefully we can give our children a chance to play with other kids. Other skills that they're doing, they're throwing balls. They're probably trying to roll them also. So having these types of toys for them to use are very helpful. Siguro ang pangdagdag, kaya nga po kung mahilig po nga sila mag-climb and things like that, kung may playground po sa inyo, being able to play on those things are also helpful, especially for the energy that they might have. And we have our 3-year-olds. Our 3-year-olds are really showing a wider range of emotions. They can show affection, they can show concern, they might express when they're upset. Ayan po, yung iba po sa kanila, when unexpected things happen, they might cry. And unexpected po, not for us it's unexpected for them. Um, there are certain things kasi that because they're younger and their expectations are a little bit smaller than ours, kung naiiba yun, minsan yun nakaka-trigger po ng tantrum. But for us, we don't understand why. So really, sometimes kasi if it goes out of their usual routines, um, these might trigger some tantrums. So it helps if you create routines for your 3-year-olds. They are also showing a lot of these greater thinking skills. Yung iba po sa kanila, they can actually tell you their age already. They're solving more complex puzzles. They can probably figure out some of the toys on and off switches, using levers, using particular buttons to get things to do a certain thing or a certain way. So talaga when you see them interacting, when you see them doing an activity, you're actually seeing a thinking brain already as they're playing. They're also developing a lot of the skills that you'll see them use eventually in preschool, like holding a pen and making simple marks and maybe even making shapes already. Hindi po perfect. Medyo magaling po si little boy in the picture. Sometimes they might be able to trace, and then some of them might be able to make the shape. But we want to just give them opportunities to practice. Um, at this age, they're also able to flip through books a little bit more. Open bottles also is a skill that they are developing. So a lot of fine motor skills po, no? And then they are actually moving a lot more with a lot more accuracy as well and a lot more independence. So walking up and down the stairs is something that they are able to navigate by themselves. They also learn to climb well. So climbing is actually a skill that we want them to have. Motor coordination din naman po kasi yun, no? So I've discussed the first 3 years of life, ang ating infants to toddlers po, no? And we've seen that progression of how they develop from that simple little baby that just looked at you to that independent child na naglalakad, nagka-climb, and will probably eventually go to school. So before I actually end the talk that I was assigned, I want to just go back quickly to the milestones, and just to highlight why, as professionals, these lists become important for us, who help watch out for your children. We need to just be able to look at red flags in kasi, so that we can watch out for things that your child might need, or when your child might need a little extra help in terms of development. And so let me give you like a brief list of things to look out for your kids. And let's start with motor milestones po, no? So some of our kids at 3 months, if you're seeing poor head control, this is a red flag. Meaning, pag dinapaan niyo po siya, hindi pa rin niya talaga kaya to put up the head. And you know how we talked about how that's important kasi we want them to be able to look around when they lift up their heads. Their hands are still fisted at 4 months is also a red flag kasi kung naka-fist nga naman po ang hands, paano po sila maghahawak ng mga toys or reach for things or to play with things kasi hindi po nakabukas ang kamay to hold them. If our children at 7 to 8 months are still not being able to sit without much support, that's also a concern. So we don't know kamusta muscle development, how come you're not able to sit up, or if they're not yet walking at 15 months and not being able to jump yet at 2.5 years old. So these are things that we're already expecting at that age po sana. Things to hopefully help children move more or to develop their gross motor skills is to keep in mind that movement is important. And that movement is something that we want all of our kids to experience on a daily basis. Actually, pati tayo as adults. There are minimum amounts of physical activities throughout the day that we're actually required, not even required, encouraged to experience. So babies less than 1 year old should have at least 30 minutes of physical activity per day. Kasama na rin po dyan ang tummy time. For those that are older, crawling, kasama na rin po yun. Our toddlers, they're 1 to 2 year olds, we actually encourage at least 3 hours of physical activity. Um, and that's just saying that we don't want them to be sedentary. It's actually okay that they're walking around and not just sitting at a table the entire day. Because the minimum is 3 hours, at least 180 minutes. And for our preschoolers, 3 to 5 year olds, um, for that 3 hours, 1 hour of it should have at least moderate to vigorous activity, meaning they should have running involved. They can have jumping. They can actually play early sports like kicking balls. These are all part of vigorous or moderate to vigorous activity that we want our preschoolers to have in their day. And then for middle childhood to adolescence, we want to have at least that 1 hour a day of the moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity that is happening daily. This is also why you'll see a lot of educators, a lot of teachers, or those that work in child development or child advocates like myself. We really want to make sure that recess stays in the curriculum, PE stays in the curriculum. Kasi nga, if you are going to have this type of intensity of physical activity during the day, we need to make sure it's scheduled in to the day-to-day activities of the kids. And just so that you know, pati ang adults po, no? We want to make sure that you get at least 2.5 to 3 days, 3 hours per week of physical activity, and to also make sure that you have strengthening exercises for yourselves. The next domain I want to discuss is actually language, and wanting to keep in mind that there are actually prerequisites to language. If ever language is a concern for us, we just want to make sure that you know that to be able to develop good language, you need to have normal hearing. You also need to have normal or we call it integrity. So dapat intact po ang oromotor structures, the structures of the mouth, the tongue, the sides, the lips. These are all part of language development. We also want to check that the cognitive ability of the child is there para matutunan po niya yung mga words at magamit po siya. And then we want to make sure that the environment that our child is in is actually stimulating language. Are there books available? Are people talking to the child? Are people listening or responding to the child when the child tries to communicate? So because these are all important for communication. And communication skills, because most babies, they'll say their first word by the time they're 1 year old. And then just so that you know that toddlers will usually use facial expressions and gestures to communicate also with some of the words that they've learned. And then young toddlers, keeping in mind that they probably understand a lot more language than they're actually able to say. So just keeping that in mind so that we also don't want to over bombard our children with the words without giving them an opportunity to express themselves also. With just very quickly, some red flags. A child who does not turn to sound is of a concern. Kung hindi pa sila nagbababbling or hindi man lang sila nag-gesture to actually express themselves by the time they're 1, that's something we want to look into. Wala pang single word at all by 16 months. By 2 years old, they're not putting words together yet. By 3 years old, they're not putting 3 words together or having phrases yet. It's also something that we want to look into. And we do have some children who dati nagsasalita na, tapos biglang nawala po yung skills or biglang hindi na sila nagsasalita or nabawasan yung alam nilang mga salita is something that's a red flag that we also look into. The next domain is the social emotional skills. And social emotional skills involve both your self help, things that you do for yourselves, and also the social skills, how you interact with other people. Because yeah, social emotional skills help you learn self control, helps you learn self confidence, and socializing skills as well. So oftentimes this is related to ano yung binibigay natin na exposure sa kanila. How much independence do we actually allow them to try to do for themselves? And their number of opportunities that they have to actually interact with other people as well. So some of the red flags for social emotional skills is yun, hindi pa sila nagsa-social smile by 3 months. Ano po ibig sabihin ng social smiles? Yun po yung sinabi natin kanina na pag nagsa-smile siya, may meaning na po yung smile niya sa inyo. Hindi lang po siya reflex na nakakita ng face nag-smile. Now, they smile from genuine happiness. They're also not laughing in playful situations by 6 months. They're hard to console when they're 1 year old. Hard to console and stiffening. Ibig sabihin, you're trying to carry them at hindi mapakali in any strategy that you've used in the past or you've been trying for the year. That's something that we can actually look into. So why is our child having such a hard time calming down? A child who is in constant motion or a child who doesn't play with other children by the time they're 3 years old is social emotional milestones that we want to look into din kung hindi pa po siya namimili. And then the last domain of development that I want to introduce is the idea of cognitive skills. Cognitive domain is thinking and problem solving of children. So being able to look for object, pulling things out of a shelf, like the little boy that's in the shelf right now, they're actually learning skills for trying to get to what they're looking for. In the photo with the blocks, being able to use their fine motor skills to put blocks on top of each other and to visualize and think about a tower. These are cognitive skills of children. Being able to pretend play of being a doctor, pretending that an object can be used for another task or another activity. These are all part of cognitive skills. And so red flags for that for this domain is hindi pa sila alert to mom. Ibig sabihin or mom or the primary caregiver na madalas kasama po ni baby. Pagpasok niya, hindi pa rin nag-aalerto kay mommy or whoever it is that takes care of them. That is something of a concern because the question there is how come you're not recognizing yet your primary caregiver after 2 months? At 6 months, if they're not searching for fallen objects, sabihin, you drop something from the um, tray and they don't go looking for it, that is a cognitive skill that we want them to be able to develop. At 12 months, they should have object permanence already, so no object permanence is a concern. Object permanence is that idea of out of sight, out of mind. Yung tipong may toy, kapag tinakpan mo siya, hindi na niya pupuntahan. By 12 months old po, didiretso pa rin siya at kukunin niya po yung toy na yun. There's no interest in cause-effect games at 8 months old. So peekaboo is a cause-effect game. Toys that are like Jack in the Box or things that pop up, these are cause and effect. May ginawa ka, may effect. And if there's no interest in that yet, hindi pa rin nagpa-form, that is a red flag for cognitive skills. And at 3 years old, we do expect them to already know their name. So that's something that we can ask them as well. So again, we have limited time, so I'm going to stop there. Some takeaways that I hope you can get from this that we can be aware of milestones, but to be able to set realistic goals for our child. Like we shouldn't need to expect them to know all the milestones that are in the chart because it will happen as long as we give them an opportunity to move around, to explore, to interact with other people. Just remember that development is a process and it will usually follow a sequence like what we shared today. Children will only learn something if you give them the opportunity to actually learn it. And that, yeah, children will always learn in the context of a relationship. A young child's learning will also require many repetitions and trying. Baka tayo pagod na po tayo sa kakaulit-ulit. Sila po kasi they're still mastering that skill. And so we can help them learn these skills. We can also help introduce new ideas with them, which is why it's so important to be able to play with the younger ones, and help them learn through their play as well. So that's it. I want to thank you for your attention for this discussion. Again, if at any time you feel like you are concerned about your child's development, please approach your pediatricians. They should be able to do a developmental screening for you, or at least point you in the direction of someone who can help you with that. I hope this talk was helpful. I will be available for Q&A. Bye.
The Edamama Online Family Expo is brought to you by our major sponsors: Pampers, Rockwell, Unilove, Health Now, Grab Express, Tiny Buds, and Metrobank. We would also like to thank our minor sponsors: Cetaphil Baby, Duna, Baby Dove, Nature to Nurture, Johnson's, and Ogalala. This event is made possible by our key media partners, Kumu, Smart Parenting, and MoneyMax.